Thank you, Pranam. Swamiji, a very big thank you to you and really grateful. Sorry, I have an allergy today, so please bear with me. My voice might crack in between. Um, Very sincere thanks to Vinayaka Mission and of course Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation. I'm very lucky to come here to express some of the views, which is part of the justice discourse that the foundation has been working on for quite more than a decade now. As you see that, my topic is basically around hierarchy. You know what is hierarchy? You know, somebody's at the top, somebody's in the middle, somebody's in the bottom, and there are other people there. And there are often differences in power. So the person who's on the top might have all the powers about taking decisions. The person down below might not have a very similar sort of, power to voice her or his opinions. So that is a hierarchy. And sometimes we say, our freedom, the freedom that we want, the freedom to do a lot of things is constrained by the hierarchy. Because of the hierarchy, I'm not able to do certain things. But if we go to the second slide, we will find that, you see that picture on your left side. It's a very nice mandala, nice picture. But if it's on cloth, and you put your fingers on the center of the cloth and you just pull it up. So what was flat becomes layered. So you have the center on the top and the circumference below. So if you go to the second slide. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry about this. Yeah, as you can see. So we saw something that was symmetrical because the world, we are all so different and diverse in the world. So we are not all the same. But we somehow come together into a larger picture. And hierarchy is sometimes also natural in the terms of, even when we eat our food. So we first touch our food, we put it up from the plate, put it into our mouth, chew it, and then swallow it, and that's how, and things go on. So sometimes there are these functional hierarchies also, but it's also nature's way of trying to, Shri Priya was talking a lot. She actually made it easy for me by talking about balance, how the center and the circumference can balance together. So, but sometimes it is, of course, bad when this hierarchy resists change. So people say that if this is the somebody's on the top and this is the structure, this is going to go on forever. Hierarchy sometimes becomes bad when there is no accountability of people on top to people who are below. It often masks inequality. Sometimes we say hierarchy is created because of merit. The best person is on top. But sometimes it actually masks the fact that the person who is the best person has been born into privilege. So privilege puts him on top rather than on merit. So sometimes that becomes a big question when we come to hierarchy. As I said, it limits our voices. I have low status in that entire hierarchy. My voice is not heard. I'm afraid to express my opinions. And of course, when hierarchy is treated as very natural and permanent, that's when the problem lies, and that's where it does not serve the cause of justice. And coming to justice, I'll tell you a story. The story is about 4 brothers and a cat. So these 4 brothers had a father who was a merchant who lived in Mahabalipuram. And during the Pallava times, as you know, there was a lot of trade across the oceans to Southeast Asia. And this was a very rich merchant. And when he died, he divided his property equally among, before he died, he divided his property equally among the 4 brothers. But then there was this cat. This was very difficult to divide. Who will take charge of the cat? So you had some wise relatives who came over and said, okay, this cat will be fed equally by all the brothers, and each of the legs of the cat will belong to one brother. So all the 4 brothers were assigned one leg of the cat. So now one day, one of the legs of the cat, as you can see, got injured. And the youngest brother, who was in charge of that leg, put in medicine onto the leg of the cat and then tied a bandage and etc. So things were going okay, but then suddenly the bandage started coming loose. And you know what cats are about. They're jumping from somebody else's window into kitchen, stealing something or the other. And what happened was it went to a kitchen in the neighborhood and somebody chased the cat out. In the meantime, the bandage, the loose end of the bandage caught fire. And the cat was scared and came back to that home, and he was so scared that he kept jumping all around that house, and the entire house of the 4 brothers caught fire and was destroyed. So what were the other brothers to do? They went to the magistrate of the time, and they complained about the younger brother, saying it was the younger brother's leg, the cat's leg, which caused this entire problem. So the magistrate heard the entire case, and he came to a conclusion, no, the compensation will not be paid by the younger brother. The compensation will be paid by the other 3 brothers, because it is those legs which allowed the cat to run all over the house and actually burn the house down. So, you know, when we talk about justice, this is a folk tale, and this is a very, very indigenous way of expressing what we call a systemic model of justice. I will not get into details and theories of stuff, but a systemic model of justice actually talks about that there is shared responsibility for any incident. You just can't pin blame on one thing, one leg of the cat and that one brother. There is a systems view of causation that, a lot of things come together to create an incident. A lot of us are responsible. It's not just one person. Also, some of the reasoning that we do nowadays in our legal system is about very formalistic. But these stories talk to us about indigenous ways of looking at justice, talk about how we should not be legalistic. I mean, just looking at that black and white of the law. And I will come to how children get affected by these, legalistic ways of interpretation of law. So it has to be a very non-formal way in which we reason. We have to look at the context, and everything has to be equitable. As somebody mentioned yesterday, so, equity is that this person who has less needs more support than the person who has more. That's equity. We can't have everything equal to the person who is more stronger than a person who is slightly weaker. Of course, and then we recognize interdependence of different events. So this is basically the justice that we are also looking for children. And I really thank Swamiji for this invitation, because for every act of injustice, it is the children who suffer the most all across the world. And their voices are rarely heard. And even today, we don't have children on the platform, but I am trying to represent their experiences as they move through this justice system. The Juvenile Justice Act is this overarching act that we have in India, trying to protect children in need and care and protection. It also lays down, norms of how do we deal with children who have committed offenses. But we have something called justice. But as I was saying, like in the previous slides, the way justice gets interpreted into this act is not very contextual. Why not? Because the law talks about a very important concept called the best interest of the child. Now, what is the best interest of a child? Who decides what is the best interest of a child? Does the child have a role? Does the parent decide? Does the teacher decide? Actually, this is where the major injustices start. You have run away from home. Let me tell you my experience. When I first started working with children on the railways, I was very young, and I had this idea about this perfect Indian family that we have, that the family cannot be wrong. Everything is right in the family. And then I met children who have been abandoned, children who have run away because they have faced extreme violence in the family, children who've run away because they have not been loved and cared for. And my entire idea of this ideal Indian family started breaking down. And I realized that there was no justice for children right there in the family. But according to the law I mentioned, children like these are often brought in front of what is called a child welfare committee. Many of you might know about that, which is at the district level in India. And there are people like me, middle class and etc., educated, who are sitting there and trying to decide about the fate of the child. Where will the child go? Shall the child go back to the family? Shall the child be kept in a childcare institution? What will happen to the child? What is the plan about the child? And our own assumptions about families will tell us okay, no, the best place of the child is the family. Send back the child to the family. I have had cases like this where a beggar in one of, I work in West Bengal, and a beggar in one of the towns there had a young adolescent girl, daughter, and he wanted the girl to be put in under some sort of care system. But the law has a line that the family is the best place for the child. So the Child Welfare Committee, in spite of all the entreaties, sent back the girl to the streets because that's where the family was there. You can imagine what would happen to the girl in the next few months. So that is where the entire structure of the law sometimes itself creates injustice for children. And this is because the best interest of the child and how we look at the child is a lot that has come in from Western constructions of childhood. So a child is weak, a child is innocent, the child understands nothing, it can't act on its own, and a child is domesticated. So the child is best inside the family. And now let's look at 3 pictures, and I will not, and you will all understand what I mean when I say that in indigenous forms of views of children, how different this is. So here is Krishna lifting Govardhana. Is this child a weak? He was a child. According to the definition of the law today, he was under 18. Is this person weak? If we all know the story, he was actually challenging the worship of Indra. And he told that, we are all cowherds here, and we should worship the hill rather, because that's the hill that sustains, our livelihoods. So this was a young child who was actually trying to tell us all this. Was he weak? Certainly not. Was this child innocent? He had foresight to say that, okay, the waters of the Yamuna was being poisoned by Kaliya, and what can be done? And he banished Kaliya outside the area. Was this child innocent? Was this child domesticated? I come from Bengal, which is a very, very rich history of Krishna worship and Krishna poems and all that. And you have poems where, the mother Yashoda is expressing, her worry that, the child Krishna will go out to graze. But here, the other boys are coming and, assuring the mother, saying that nothing's going to happen to your child. We will take him out to graze. So is the child domestic here? So this is where the difference between how we look at children from a very Indic perspective differs from what happens in the West. As a result, when children from our country comes in front of child welfare committees with their own indigenous ways of thinking about childhood and families, there is a huge problem where the ichha of the child, the will of the child, is never considered of what the child might want to do. Of course, the child has different levels of maturity, but the will of the child is often subjected to the will of an adult. The agency of the child, the fact that the child can himself or herself act on her or his behalf, is often not part of the law. The law is custodial. It is always trying to keep children inside. It's always trying to keep children locked inside homes. It's very protectionist. It's not just about protection. It's about children do not have any capacity to protect themselves. They have no capacity to think about what is good about and bad about themselves. They have no capacity to take decisions, and we must continue to protect them. And that is why you have so many escapes from child care homes. You have so much rebellion in different child care institutions and even within the families, because we are somehow not respecting their agency. But where has it all come from? And I will end with this, because there's a lot of discourse in general in the development sector and about children, about coloniality. The fact that our colonial masters have left, but their ways of thinking and their institutions are all carrying on. So everything that is not Eurocentric knowledge is not given any importance. Their entire decision-making and structural power that the law today gives us is very colonial, and nobody is even challenging it. The entire structures of law, the power, and the hierarchy I started with, also about coloniality of being. What am I? What is a child? What is a human being? This is a very, very Eurocentric way in which we look at children and we look at human beings. So this is something will be my request to Shri Vishnu Mohan Foundation, is to somehow foster dialogue on indigenous knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge system in social development, so that justice can be served. And thank you.